Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Property AI Report. This is your weekly digest of all things property and AI, brought to you by me, Mal McCallion, and my good friend and co-host, Matt Goddard. Matt, how are you today?
Oh, great. We've got some form of a routine going, Mal, albeit 2 Mondays on the bounce. So I'm in a great mood.
Exactly right. You just like to know what's really happening, don't you? And you don't like my sliding these things in basically with about 5 minutes to go.
That's it. 728 link in the WhatsApp, unheard of.
That's organised, my friend, organised. Well, listen, and we have got plenty to get through today. So let us dive into our property news. All right. Perhaps sounding a little bit like a 7-day stuck record from last Monday's one, but we're going to start with Rightmove. Now, they have been back in the news again towards the end of last week. And I think if we can look at what On the Market has said about it this morning, they've gone in a little bit two-footed, talking about how they, On the Market, are the friend of the agents. And Rightmove essentially has been overcharging for many, many, many years. So, yeah, listen, I think this is a really, really important story because Rightmove is under threat of up to £1 billion, which is very kind of sinister, Dr. Evil friendly, £1 billion worth of damages potentially coming its way in a class action led by one of the ex-members of the Competition and Markets Authority, a guy that should know exactly what he needs to do to get something, to get somebody to be prosecuted under these particular rules. So yeah, I think it's going to be a really, really important and powerful moment for that portal, as well as for On the Market and others. What's your take, Matt?
Well, this obviously broke at the back end of last week with relation to this class action lawsuit or a claim against Rightmove, didn't it? So post a recording of our pod and last week Rightmove were in the news, especially around the podcast content about the share price dropping when they'd spent not a huge amount of their revenue on AI and like the knock-on effects of that. And then we've got this legal claim coming in the meantime. And I think more than anything, when I first saw it hit, I assumed it was going to be like the Say No to Rightmove group again, and a collection of agencies who maybe have got sick of seeing how much they're paying for Rightmove, and sometimes that's in context of the larger brands paying a heck of a lot less, right? But this is, as far as I can tell from the various articles that have gone round, it's not just a group of agents getting together on Facebook and starting to lob stones. But as you just said in the summary there, it's actually coming from someone who should know their stuff.
Yeah, and as you say, it seems to be. I think it was the timing suggests it was at the very least inspired by Sean Adams, and again, fair play to him. He kind of launched this petition about 6 months or so ago to get agents to essentially appeal to the Competition and Markets Authority to pay attention to this and to look at the fact that this 70% margin that Rightmove is able to talk to its investors about every single year is abnormal. And there must be something broken in the market if one organisation is able to crow about that every year. So I think that must have triggered something, a process somewhere along the line. This guy Jeremy Newman must have sort of clocked that. And yeah, it looks like it's a kind of straightforward, no win, no fee. You can get on board it if you're an agent. You can opt out if you want. So every agent who has paid in the last 6 years anything to Rightmove is automatically opted in, but they can opt out if they like. So it's going to be interesting to see as well what the reaction of Rightmove is. One assumes that on the surface they're just going to kind of blithely ignore it, but I imagine under the hood they're going to be sitting there trying to get as many agents as possible to kind of opt out, perhaps offering them sweetheart deals to do so. But yeah, I think it is a really, really important moment. I do hear on the grapevines and the chats that there are more coming. That this isn't actually going to be the only one necessarily that hits Rightmove. So yeah, I think it's a really good and albeit late, a good kind of example of actually what's possible if you really kind of get together and really go and focus hard on what is a very kind of unjustifiable situation. And you will have heard, as I do regularly, and I was out on my tour over the summer, some really heartbreaking stories of people, illness, debt, all these kind of things, not being able to afford, things like Christmas parties, whatever. This has had real world impact on a lot of agents, and I think that it is heartening to see that something is now happening about that for sure.
Well, what I found quite interesting, because I was reading social media commentary on it, flying back from Edinburgh yesterday at the airport, about some of the names you touched on there didn't seem to know quite what the next steps were, and it almost read on the social media comments like they weren't actually involved in this. Obviously, they've done the petitioning for a while, but those people who've come together from Scott and Scott UK LLP and Innsworth Capital, who've sort of the specialist litigation funder, have sort of brought this movement. And as you said, there's the opt-out opportunity there to basically say, look, we're not involved, but otherwise it's everyone who's paid fees over the last 6 years. And as you touched on right at the start of the market, of taking a fresh swipe at them, saying we've always believed in fair fees and escalating costs through Rightmove. It came from a spokesperson from the market, so not tagging a name against it, but obviously seeing the bit of noise. It feels a bit like what's gone on the other side of the water, doesn't it, with Zillow and CoStar and Compass all sort of weighing in on each other.
Yeah, yeah, and obviously the litigation culture isn't quite as strong over here, but it's, yeah, as you say, from the playbook of CoStar going in and kind of jumping on and piling on Zillow over in the States. Obviously, CoStar owned On the Market is doing a very similar thing over here, and again, fair play. They started out as an agent owned portal, and they've Jason Tebb and others have made a real point of speaking to the market and being seen to be championing agents along the way. So fair play to them, and I think they've got a justifiable voice in this particular thing, and it's going to be interesting to see how it all plays out.
Yeah.
All right, next up, we are finally gifted with the date for the Renters Reform Act to come into play. And it's staged, so there are a number of different phases to it. But the first phase is March, isn't it? Sorry, May the 1st.
Yeah, just 1st of May 2026 is well, that's set out as the date, but as we know from the deposit legislation coming in back in early 2007, now that was originally hyped to be 2006 back end, and it got delayed while things were put in place and changes made, and even at the start of 2007, and it still wasn't locked in. So we're saying phase one's May 1st of May 2026, which is the immediate changes. Phase two will be the independent body, which is going to be late 2026. That's the private landlord ombudsman and the centralised landlord property database. And then phase three will be subject to consultation, which is things like the property conditions standards. So and I think the 1st of May will be things like Section 21 disappearing, and the tenants can appeal above excessive market rent increases to forcing them out. And also, landlords cannot unreasonably refuse tenants' requests for pets. And obviously, with Mabel, that's one that we've kept a close eye on, isn't it? But I think that's the 1st of May is the one that a lot of the letting agents are keeping an eye on, because they're the ones where the changes and the advisement to, if that's even a word, to their existing landlords really, really focused and make sure you've got your processes and people all aligned.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the phase two and phase three do kind of smell a little bit like, kicking that ball very firmly into the longest of long grass. So, yeah, the late 2026 could obviously mean 31st of December. And I would not be surprised, as you say, to see it slip into 2027. And then phase three just hasn't got a date. So, goodness knows when that might finally come to place. But yes, it's going to change things. I know, we hear the anecdotes all the time of kind of the casual landlords selling up, basically running to the hills because this is just getting far too complicated. But that then giving an opportunity to much more professional portfolio landlords who are coming and snapping up some of these tasty looking buy-to-let properties. And I think that's going to continue, right? But then it does kind of narrow down the opportunities for agents to get to more and more landlords. If one landlord has now got 10 properties rather than 10 having one, then that concentrates a lot of the power into the hands of those that are running those particular or liaising with those particular landlords. So that, I think, it's all change. We talked about it a lot. I think it's going to be interesting to see just how hard they push and what the kind of, how are they going to actually implement it and then police it. But yeah, the first bit is going to happen, and May the 1st is the date currently. But we were speaking just then about landlords and about
Nice segue, Mal.
portfolio landlords. Thanks, mate. Listen, I was so smooth with this one. We were talking about landlords and portfolio landlords, and it's come to our attention, hasn't it, Matt, that Lloyd has quietly built up a 2 billion rental portfolio with thousands and thousands of properties.
Yes, it's an article or a set of stories that actually came out maybe a week or so ago. But I thought, given the nature of the press and the news at the moment around lettings, it's one where in lettings, we always sort of look at, or I certainly do, because I'm a bit of a geek on this, at Europe and places like Germany, where a lot more people rent than actually own the homes. And
Mhm.
you have bigger institutional landlords. And Lloyd set out at the start of 2021, I think it was, this plan to build a portfolio, a mass huge plans to add 43,000 more by 2030. So it's looking to have a portfolio of about 50,000 properties. And it's
Mhm.
already hit this £2 billion portfolio of residential estate, which is about 7,000 properties. And they've done it through a combination of sort of agreements with build to rent people like Red Brick and Red Row taking on these portfolio homes. But it's much more seeing as landlords or even tenants think with this new legislation what's going on, seeing these institutional investors come in and start to focus on the sector shows a bit of a gear change, and hopefully will be good for where we have had rogue landlords before, and tenants' quality of properties, but also lettings agency working with those more institutional investors.
Yeah, and one part of the story I thought was really interesting is how they've started to be very focused on changing commercial properties into residential properties. So they've got this site in Pudsey in Yorkshire where they're building 93 properties inside some formal commercial premises, and to think that actually somebody's going to sort of systemize that, obviously this is a big organization, they're going to have processes and stuff like that. And actually, again, you can walk down any high street in any town and you can see some commercial properties that could probably do with being occupied. And we know we've got a housing crisis where there are not enough houses for people. So I'm really quite excited by the fact that actually, maybe with the weight of these, that this particular organization and others will undoubtedly come and compete, that actually we might start to see a significant uptick in conversions of properties that have lain dormant for a while. And actually, people will be able to live in them. As you say, going after 50,000 rental properties is pretty punchy. And that's by 2030, I think, which is only
It's not
5 years away.
far off.
Yeah, it's not. So good luck to them. And yeah, and I'm sure we'll see many more conversions and many more acquisitions as they build out that target. All right, that is our property news this week. Let us go and see what's happening in AI and tech news. Okay, Matt, we have another iteration of OpenAI's ChatGPT. It is 5.1. ChatGPT 5 is now ChatGPT 5.1. And the biggest of big news with it is you can kind of get away with faking a bit more of your AI written prose because it's got what they call the M dash, the EM dash. So if you've checked out any AI written text, it's quite liberal with its hyphens, but the hyphens are always kind of double length and don't have any spaces in them. And that has always been a kind of giveaway for those that know that this is probably AI written. And I'm sure that school kids, the land over, have been caught out by that many, many times. But now they say that ChatGPT 5.1 has solved that, and it's done some other stuff as well, hasn't
It almost sidled into shot as well, didn't it? It suddenly
it?
came into the model selector without really much fanfare. And I know Kimi K2, which we'll touch on in a moment, sort of been getting a lot of the news and hype, which is the Chinese model, and everyone's waiting for the next iteration of Vio, right? So it feels like maybe they've rushed to get it out to beat that sort of noise coming from Google. But we're certainly, what I've seen so far is a lot better on the written content, as you say there. It's Sam Altman was quick out the door to say, look, the M dash is no more, and hopefully he's correct. But certainly the writing style where a lot of people tend to default more towards Claude for that, and I think you're more of a Claude user for your prose, aren't you?
Yeah. So
Um,
yeah, I have always found it better and more kind of personality to it, really.
but I also found, certainly from the limited amount of time I've had a chance to play with it from the back end of last week, was being able to choose the personality and to just be more focused on how you want. So it's more returning to the ChatGPT 4 world, isn't it? Where people sort of were up in arms when 5 suddenly launched and you lost all that personality and no longer had that AI friend that you could snuggle up to on the couch and be given platitudes about how strongly your day's gone, and now you can default toggle between default, professional, friendly, candid, quirky, efficient, nerdy, and cynical. And I'm sure you probably expect this, but I much more prefer the cynical who just tells you as it is, rather than buttering you up with, "Oh, that's a great question, Mal. What a wonderful way to phrase it. Here's the answer." But you've got those back again, and Certainly, that seems to be well received.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the one that kind of tells you how amazing you look. When you get up in the morning, all that sort of stuff. It's good to have that back, I have to say.
Mm.
But yeah, no, it's a, it's a step forward again. And I think a lot of these changes. There's the cosmetic side, which you kind of see, but then behind the scenes, I think one of the things that is notable about this one is it is far lighter in terms of it's how much compute it uses in order to answer questions. They've been taking a lot of notes have AI, I'm sorry, OpenAI from the Chinese models. And again, we'll talk about Kimi K2 in a sec. But yeah, it does seem to be another kind of iteration step forward. I frequently have to try and remember just how amazing all this stuff is, because very quickly you just get a bit blasé about it. Go, oh come on, why can't it do like this and that? Or it's like, well, it's pretty, it's 90% the same. So what? But it's actually phenomenal tech. And yeah, look, for anybody out there who has not played around with ChatGPT 5.1, highly recommend, and do chat to it as well, because chatting with it is really, really interesting, particularly if you then do put it onto the Matt Goddard cynical setting, and just imagine the dulcet tones of him just, basically telling you that you're not brilliant and you're not beautiful. It's
Just
just,
factual, Mel. Just factual. I'll tell you you're beautiful when you're beautiful.
my friend, I appreciate it very much. All right, next up on our AI and tech news, we've got the Kimi K2 conversation. So Kimi K2 is not anything to do with Kim Kardashian. It is instead a Chinese model that is open source. So again, you can just go and download it and run it, and it's really, really, really impressive, and it's getting a lot of press because of the way that it's built, through its mixture of experts. It's got a massive trillion total parameters, but it is something that you can download. It runs. It's beating some of the benchmarks of some of the more established closed models. Matt, what do you make of this one?
Just the way that these foundational models are pushing each other, and obviously this is a big one from China and takes a lot from the sort of the deep seek side of things, and that 1 trillion parameters is huge. But like anyone concerned about using Chinese technology, and quite rightly, because obviously the state over there, everything's open, everything's fair game, right? But the fact you can download these and
Just
no
sorry,
one can hear you say allegedly when you don't when it
the
cuts out like that. But
Jim Big is obviously
uh,
listening.
yes, it's already hitting the red alerts. But the fact you can download it locally, and therefore by having it local and running it yourself, you've not just got those closed walls, but obviously the cost comes out of the picture as well. Like it's not just pushing the foundational models from the US hard to make sure they're up to speed, and obviously DeepSeek made a massive step change at the start of the year, didn't it, when it shot to the top of all the charts and everyone's utilizing it. But the fact that you can take this locally and it's up there with the rest, but also without the cost, just means that, to use a term I've heard a few times by salespeople, it keeps you honest and keeps you pushing away. So I like the fact there's multiple options there with the foundational models, and you can take your pick and keep seeing those advancements.
Yeah, 100%. Big stuff coming out from over there, and if that's what they're releasing right now, then undoubtedly they are, getting even further ahead. I'd say on the open source already over in China. All right, this is something that struck me from Meta. So Jan LeCun is one of the godfathers of AI. He is the chief, or has been the chief AI scientist at Meta for a long old time, and he led the charge with the Llama models that they created and making them open source. He's quite outspoken in terms of he doesn't think that the current GPTs, so the transformer models, are going to get us to AGI, which is artificial general intelligence, which is when AI is as smart as most of us. There needs to be a different architecture underneath the AI to be able to get there. Now, he is now reported to be leaving Meta. And the reason I think this is interesting is, A, he's been there for ages, and has basically built and guided the whole of Meta's original AI strategy. But he's since been supplanted by Alexander Wu, who's essentially he's coming from which AI was it?
Scale AI. He was one of the acqui-hires, wasn't he?
That's right. Yeah, for billions.
14.3 billion acqui-hire. Says a lot
Exactly.
about the kid. Was he 20, 21? I say kid. Well, it makes really undermines a super intelligent guy. But he is, half my age.
Yeah, so he's come in billions. Then they've hired loads and loads and loads of other AI engineers for billions and billions and billions. And yeah, Jan LeCun has just kind of been gently sidelined. So I'm not surprised that he's leaving. And I imagine that wherever he goes, he's going to make quite a big splash, because he's up to, until about the last 6 months, when Meta has completely kind of pivoted in its strategy. He was very, very vocal about where he saw the future of AI, and it doesn't now seem to align with where Meta and Mark Zuckerberg do.
That's it. And he was a winner of the Turing Award, wasn't he? So he's like properly prestigious. And that wasn't recent. Was that late 90s, early noughties? I need to
So
come up
I
to his
think the
now.
three of them got it. I think it was like 2017 or something like that. I
Oh,
think
right, that recent.
yeah, him, Jeffrey Hinton. But the work that he was doing was yeah, for the 90s and stuff like that. But it was only really when I think things started to pick up with neural nets and stuff like that, that actually Jeffrey Hinton, and was it Bengio, who got who shared the Turing Award. So yeah, really, really interested to see where he ends up. Other big names in AI, Fei-Fei Li, her World Labs. Now she's a very noted AI engineer, done some significant work, I think, at Google and various other places. She launched World Labs earlier on this year, and the idea with her modeling is that actually it kind of 3D renders the whole world. So instead of it just being a snapshot or an image that then kind of moves along and it creates the world on the fly as you're looking at it, what this does is it kind of imagines or realizes a whole 3D world that then becomes very stable. And actually, you can kind of turn around and look at something behind you, and then you can go back and look, and the thing that was
Yeah.
there in front of you is still there. So I think this is going to be amazing for things like gaming and stuff like that, and hyper personal gaming. So if you imagine that actually instead of a pre-built world that you are kind of traversing and navigating, actually what happens is you've got a world that is kind of almost exclusively you. You will probably have a character that is a distinct character. But yeah, I think this kind of opens up a huge amount of potential.
Well, it takes your sort of the image stuff you do in model prop to a huge new level, doesn't it? In terms of I bang on about Australia, but where like 10 years ago we had video walkthroughs and you were able to click and traverse a set of pictures that have been stitched together, a la Giraffe 360 or the one that on the market's just bought. But this really means that you can take photos, and the one I saw, which was incredible, was the picture Nighthawk of that bar with the
Yeah,
drinkers in, and seen different iterations of it with sort of like the 1950s characters sat at yeah by Hopper, and creating a world from that one image, and the fact that it persists so you can interact with the world, turn away, turn back, and how you've interacted works. So think about how we could take it to do visual walkthroughs and sort of layer in the things that you've done. So changing the way the property looks as you walk through to more of your keeping, or removing furniture, adding your own, and then still seeing those effects persisted means that it become much more flexible and engaging when you're looking at those. But obviously from a gamer point of view, it means you can really dig in as well. So there's huge opportunities with this, right?
100%. Yeah, and look, as we are doing with images and with video and stuff like that already, we're looking at how all of this stuff can be deployed within the property market, within the property industry. Obviously, there are things to be mindful of: compliance, making sure that you're not kind of totally imagining that it's got a swimming pool in the garden or whatever. But yes, the potential for this to completely change, I hesitate to use the word revolutionize, but certainly significantly enhance how properties are experienced online, I think is going to be really interesting. So yeah, it's yes, one to keep on watching. It's still very early days for the world and the world models, but yeah, we'll keep you posted on how they are building out. Right, next up on our AI and tech news, we want to talk a little bit about Cursor. So Cursor is a startup that has raised 2.3 billion and is now valued at nearly 30 billion. And it only started relatively recently, didn't it, Matt? And this is really very much in your kind of wheelhouse. With it's all about coding.
That's it. It's one of the it's interesting from a code development point of view, because we touched on last week how over the summer sort of ChatGPT 5 launched, and people were shifting between the ChatGPTs and the sort of Claude code, which was very much at the forefront for a while, and Google's taken a big step forward with the release of theirs as well in terms of the agentic coding, and I know, developers are pretty much using this across the board now. One of them, whether it's Google, whether it's Claude, whether it's ChatGPT, or with Cursor, you can choose which model is actually being utilized. And a big part of it is the fact that you can sort of set it up for your business and work through it. And at 2.3 billion funding round, it really sets out just how big this company's got, right? We talk about how you got the foundational models and then you got the app players, and Cursor is very much an app player that there are questions sometimes like, what's the point of building the app if the ChatGPT, OpenAI could easily just come along and consume you, and or does Claude do the same? But actually, that funding is probably the biggest we've seen for basically an app layer to date, really.
Yeah, exactly, and it's so often called wrappers, which is basically they've got some funky kind of great user interface at the front end, but underneath it basically is one or two or three of the frontier models. So yeah, these guys have made an absolute killing by creating something that is just much easier to use than the actual tools themselves. And they've also, I think, and during this announcement said that they've got their own model as well. So they've been building their own model based on what they now know about coding. So they kind of picked all the best bits and they're building that out. And I think that must also drive confidence in the investors that actually this is more than just a wrapper on top of somebody else, and that those other frontier labs could just pull the plug on them at any time.
Well, this the big bit about being engaged in that user interactions. You get, well, I think they call it the exhaust, don't they? So you actually see the user data. It's not just the output of what's coming out of the foundational models and sort of the parameters that they're trained on, but you actually see how the users are working with it, how they're interacting, what they're doing at given time. So you get much more granular detail, and it's that information that's the real power. A bit like when you look at sort of property listings and the portals versus property listings on social media, and you can get all that metadata out of social media about social economic information, and that's this sort of exhaust stuff that the app player get that the foundational models don't see, and that's also driving this
Yeah,
valuation.
yeah, absolutely. All right, one more story in our AI and tech news. Google has augmented its AI shopping with conversational search. Now, regular listeners will know this is something dear to my heart, the fact that you can chat and search. So, yeah, I think this is going to be a big, it's going to have a big impact, obviously, in this kind of very distinct vertical of shopping on Google. But also, I think, it's habit forming, right? What it does is it gets people to just know that actually, well, if I can do it on searching and shopping, then why can't I do it on, for example, searching for property, etc. So I just think this is yeah, it's really interesting because one of the quotes that they put out is like, we really feel that it shouldn't be so tedious to shop. And it's like, it's so much better than it used to be, when you used to have to troll around the shops. And then you'd only have this kind of like narrow window of different like things you can buy and stuff like that. And now we're like, oh yeah, it's a bit tiring to press that button like 3 times. So actually, I'm just going to talk now because that's much better.
Well, having trudged around the St James Centre in Edinburgh on, I guess it must have been Thursday, looking for a scarf to go with a wedding outfit, and it wasn't mine. I can confirm it's still as tedious as ever, and I'm aware that people involved are going to be listening to this. But the beauty of obviously the voice search is we saw this from Mustafa Suleyman as well, probably about a year ago when he was showing Microsoft's Copilot voice and how you can be interacting with it and asking for different. I bought a particular tartan tie. Is it going to work with my suit? Is it going to work with a different outfit? And you get that engagement. And I know you obviously love voice, but what I really liked about the announcement as well is as all good marketing does, it talks about a couple of the new things, then digs out something that we were talking 6 months ago, which is Google's ability to actually call stores and check availability for you as well. So it's bringing back features that were already out in there, but obviously knitting them together into a comprehensive story for this release.
Yeah, still surprised you didn't go with the kill when you were up there, mate.
I've done it once, and it was an interesting experience.
That's right. All right, that is our AI and tech news for this week. Let's move on to our AI tool of the week. We are absolutely geekily excited by this. What are we, Matt?
That's 11 Labs for those that have seen it or used it. Is the voice AI that powers quite a lot of basically voice AI that you use. ChatGPT has sort of come along and improved its voice mode, but 11 Labs for a long time has been the leader in this area, and we've referred to it on the pod over the months as they've released various different iterations of their product and offering. But now they've released the AI marketplace where you can actually use famous voices legally, and people have opted in. So a notable one for me is actually born just down the road from where I'm sat now, is Michael Caine, who has seen it very much as a continuation of his heritage. So you can have Michael Caine doing your model prop voice call answering thing that you do, and others are Liza Minnelli and even Mark Twain. That's what you
Yes.
call the product, is it? A voice prop answering thingy.
Not a lot of people know that, etc., and all sorts of show references about Michael Caine. Yeah, no, I think this is just. I think this is exciting just because it's fun and it's a good toy and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, I think more and more we're going to start seeing people or businesses differentiate themselves by association. So actually, are you more of a Michael Caine type business, or are you a Mark Twain or Alan Turing or whatever else the voices are? It's a real. I think it's a real moment. I think it's very. It obviously shows off the flexibility of the tech. That it can do this reliably and actually be bought as a particular voice, and when you listen to it, it sounds exactly like them. So yeah, look, this is where the tech is now. I say way too much that this is as bad as it's ever going to be, but it's true.
Mhm.
And yeah, it will just get better and better and better, and it will become very much indistinguishable from.
So who would you go for then, Mal? I've obviously Bagsied Michael Caine. Which of the various voices you've got? Deepak Chopra, you've got James Dean, you've got some Nobel Prize winning Richard Feynman, or John Wayne's in there. Judy Garland probably strikes me as being something you'd go for.
Yeah, do you know what, that was very very much my first choice. You've got Rock Hudson, you've got all sorts of different ones. I've always kind of thought a bit Burt Reynolds. I think I might go
I
for
could
that.
see you with a tash.
Thanks very much. Yeah, I've been growing it for about 20 years. It's still not here, but we'll get there. Right, that is the end of our property AI report this week. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll be back next week with even more property and AI news. Matt, thank you very much indeed for joining me this week. You've got a busy week on?
Absolutely, don't we always? But next week, same time, same place. We go for the hat trick of Monday morning records.
Let's see just how late I cancel that, shall we? All right, everybody. Thanks again for being part of it. We'll speak to you then. Take care. Bye-bye.
Take care, everyone.